This recommended daily activity video is going to be focused on the lower body primarily. As always, take it slow, move into this incrementally, and challenge yourself at your own pace. Use multiple rounds of the video if you have more time to get a better effect. Today's routine is going to require a chair and possibly a resistance band. That's the best option for this. So our first exercise is the tightrope walk. One of my favorite ones. If you've gone through the neuromotor routine, you know that tightrope walking is a great way of doing training dynamic balance and brain to body connections. Remember, you can modify this for your level of balance and capability. The tightrope walk obviously indicates a heel to toe and a nice straight line connection, but you could walk the plank instead with a little separation if you need more. So we're going to get started. We'll go 4 steps forward and 4 steps back for Risa. Heel to toe planting. Now the point of this is to hyperactivate your balance systems. So she's going to really plant heel to toe and feel every millimeter of the bottom of her foot. Split it up by degrees, tiny bit at a time. When you're really mindful and you pay attention to every little segment of your foot, it makes the coordination hyper-reactive or hyperactive. Go ahead and continue. You'll just continue walking that tightrope forward and back for about a minute, and you're slowing down that process so that we can speed up the reaction time training, and all those little twitches and reactions are what we're going for. That's the hyperactivation or the overload for your neuromotor system. We'll do one more trip. There's lots of ways to make this harder, aside from just being mindful and connecting to it. And if you go through that neuromotor training program on my website, then you'll learn lots of variety for this. Good. Right there. Now footwork in a different manner, getting your feet moving a lot faster in a more coordinated manner. We're going to work on some dance steps. Technically, we call these crossover steps, or we know it as the cumbia. So the first version is a cumbia. It's a crossover step behind, and it's in a 1, 2, 3 pattern. So you have a little march in place almost. So she's going to go 1, 2, 3. Let's begin. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. She's going to keep going. Obviously, you can make this a lot faster harder by speeding it up in a faster rhythm. Go at your own pace there. You can make it faster that way, but you can also make it a little bit more challenging by stepping with bigger steps or bigger rotations. So you can rotate around more, or you can take big steps back if you have the space for it. We're going to go for, why don't you pick up the pace a little bit. Let's get that heart rate up. There, now she's putting some pep in her step and a little bit more of a jogging in place type of action rather than a march in place. And let's pause there. We're going to do the same crossover step, but in front this time. It feels a little bit more challenging. Let your arms bend at about a 90-degree angle. Let's go ahead and start the clock. 30 seconds on this side, maybe 45 seconds to give you a little extra time to learn. Give me a bit more of a crossover. There you go. Turn your hips. If you let those arms bend or elbows bend and just let your hands kind of sit up in the ready position, your body will tend to cross over or use its counter rotation motions itself. So you won't have to worry too much about all this coordination going on as long as you keep those hands up in your ready position, and we can rest. Great job. Going into a lateral lunge stretch. This is a very challenging position. So again, a lot of brain to body action and coordination. I'm going to have Risa do this from the lateral view. I'll show you from the front view. She's using the chair here. She's going to use the back of the chair as support and stability and as a reference point, really, because she's going to line her hips up right in the center of the back of the chair, and her hands go here. What I'm going to have her do is take the widest stance that she can. She could probably go quite a bit wider, but I want her to be a little bit moderate in it to show you all what it might look like. Range of motion is what's going to decide how wide you can go here. She's supporting herself. Her hips are in the center of the chair. Simply, she's going to move her hips off to one side, maintaining the opposite leg straight and loading her butt back. So her hips have dropped back through her heel. Go ahead and begin with this. Her butt's kind of pointed toward the wall behind her. She's pressurizing or loading the hip and the thigh on this side she's shifted toward. On the opposite side, what's going on is she is lengthening the groin. That's the main point of this exercise, is the groin stretch, but the secondary may be the same high level of priority is the load of the posterior chain here. You're technically going into a little bit of a single leg hinge where your lower back is working, your hip is working, your thigh is working for another 5 seconds. You're just bracing and breathing, feeling that stretch on the straight leg groin. And you can rest. And we load to the other side. Same thing, may feel a little bit different. Most people do have a tighter groin on one side than the other. Most people have a more dominant leg that's more stable. So as time goes on through this 30 seconds, on your weaker side, you may feel that your body wants to shift or starts to shake and tremble a little bit, or that you're feeling that fatigue kick in a little bit more intensely. She's doing a good job of trying to keep her eyes and chest forward, though her body is slightly leaning forward because her butt has dropped back. So she's got a good straight line spine. The chair also helps to support good shoulder blade posture here. Posture through the chest. Hips and shoulders try to remain square. Everyone can rest. And we're going to go into our seated figure 4. So from this chair, we'll turn it around. She's going to have a seat. The figure 4 stretch is a really well-known stretch for the side butt area, the hip, the piriformis, and some of the deeper muscles, as well as your glutes and your external rotators and the side hip and upper butt. But it's also an important exercise to maintain good lower back stability here. The variation that we're going to start with is just a softly bent leg and a real light cross. For those of us who have hip and low back issues, just crossing this over may start to elicit a little bit of a feeling of a stretch here in the groin, front of the hip, or in that back side. And Rice is just going to slowly inch her weight up, or inch her foot up to the, you could even go sub-patella or sub-knee here first to start. Go ahead and sit back, show them how, even sitting back alleviates some of the pressure. Now for those of us who can, we would cross our foot over the patella to the top, then we'd sit up nice and tall, and that's where we're going to get that big stretch through the hip. I need to make sure that everyone has an incremental progression into this though, and has ways to challenge themselves. So other mindful technique adjustments is loading these toes up high by pulling through the shin. By pulling through that shin muscle and dorsiflexing the toes, we're going to structurally stabilize the knee. And then sitting up nice and tall from that lateral view, she's sucking and tucking, drawing in those pelvic muscles around, and it helps to optimize that stretch. Let's go ahead and switch sides. Seated figure 4 on both sides. Seated figure 4 is a little bit more advanced than that lying figure 4 that I have in my flexibility programs. Flexibility program, you're lying on your back, and you can cross that hip over quite a bit easier than in this seated position. So use those increments. Looks like Risa might be a little bit tighter on that left hip here. I can see that it's actually a little bit higher, and she's having to kind of hold it and push a little bit to get the same feeling of that stretch. So that's really, really common as well, and that would indicate maybe we need to work on that left side a little bit more. Dorsiflexed in the toe, belly sucked and tucked, everything guided into a good, active, safe stretch. Everyone, you can rest as well. Everyone can rest. The final one is that torso twist. So the torso twist, we get our resistance bands involved. Twisting is one of the most advanced and riskier general motor patterns that we can use. Technically, the spine rotates, and that's kind of the focal point here, but we're going to allow our hips to turn as well, because the spine doesn't just turn very far by itself. It has, facilitation, or it has assistance from all the joints in the kinetic chain below it as well, and then we're involving those joints in the kinetic chain above it, or in extension of it here. So we're going to take this resistance band from about a shoulder height placement and reach the body out straight forward, setting up with a little bit of a triangle of strength here. So if I bent forward here, you can see my chest to my arms is my locked in position. This is our starting position, and basically Rice is going to go from a 10 to 2 position. So she's going to open back to that 10 and rotate to the 2. Okay, and you'll go back and forth. 10 to 2 position, torso twist. 30 seconds, let's begin. So it's a very light turn She's using a really light band right now. I know she could use a heavier band, but we're gonna keep her there. If you felt like you needed more resistance, you could obviously bump out away from the anchor more or put on a heavier band here. This is a minimal type movement. You do the minimum to get the maximum out of this one. I want her hyper focused on her belly in the center of her core right here, especially in that oblique on this front side. On the back side, she's going to feel her back hip stabilizing and locked into the floor as she guides this rotation through primarily her torso, but facilitating with a little light hip turn and really coming back to the center with a tight and pretty mindfully contracted core. So she's guiding it back really steady. Let's do one last one. Squeeze, hold, slowly back to the middle, and release. Go side B. Lo mismo cosa. The same thing on the other side. Ready, begin, smooth and steady. This is an example of one of those exercises that gets done quite a bit in the fitness industry, that's kind of overdone, over-rotated, or lots of velocity and power and speed with it. And that, if you're in that stage of training, is appropriate. But all of us can benefit from slowing this down and building these mind-body connections. The slower you go with the appropriate resistance, the more those connections want to shake and tremble. And that's us working on that neuromotor system, developing that neuromotor system and our stability base from those musculoskeletal and neuromuscular connections. About 5 seconds more. Let's do one more after this. It'll be our last one. Good tight squeeze, hold, and release slowly back to the center. And that's it. Great work, everyone.